You're listening to Monday Matters, a Principal Matters podcast production.
Hi, friends. This is Will Parker, host of Principal Matters, bringing you a Monday Matters conversation with my co-host, Jen Schwanke. We're just so excited that you guys are listening in this week. And Jen, we're in January, and the conversation I wanted to have this morning is, how do you know when to have a crucial conversation versus what I call a superstar conversation? And let me explain why I'm even bringing this in, because several months ago, I got to interview David Yeager, the author of the book 10 to 25, The Science of Motivating Young People. It's an amazing book. And we talked about how good classroom teachers know how to hold high expectations for their students while also supporting those expectations through the way they do classroom management. And of course, Hattie's research always comes into these conversations. You and I have talked about this so much, that teacher expectations hold such a high effect in terms of how students can learn. And so I was thinking about how this applies in leadership too. And I was reminded of two conversations. And I'm going to bring up the names of two really important authors that I admire. One is Anthony Muhammad, who wrote the book Transforming School Culture, and another is Todd Whitaker, who wrote the book What Great Principals Do Differently. And I was actually setting in an Anthony Muhammad presentation one time a couple of years back, and he was presenting on his book, which I love because it's about the difference between types of educators: believers, tweeners, survivors, fundamentalists. We've talked about that in other settings. But specifically when you're talking about fundamentalists, those who are just so ingrained in their own patterns and so committed to their own autonomy that they don't want to participate, collaborate. They only want their kids, quote unquote. And Anthony Muhammad was just talking about the importance of engaging them in really crucial conversations. On the flip side, in Todd Whitaker's book, he talks about how it's a real danger if, when you're speaking to your staff, you are framing your conversations based on those most difficult people, which a lot of people do. They phrase an announcement, or they'll have a staff meeting and they'll address the behavior that they're concerned about. They just won't say who it is, but they're talking to everybody. And Todd Whitaker talks about how that just pulls everybody down, and how much more effective it is if you frame your conversations around your superstars and elevate everyone else by saying something. For instance, teachers, I'm so glad that I've seen you out at bus duty. Those of you that are showing up on time, that means kids are being supervised and parents are seeing you. And this just makes us all feel like this is a safe place for kids. Thank you for your commitment. Versus, hey, those of you that aren't showing up for bus duty, I'm so angry and I want you to be there on time. So sometimes I just wrestle with this question, which is, how do you know when to do one and when to do the other? Because sometimes you need to just be straight, talk straight. And sometimes you need to be able to praise good behavior. So as we step into this Monday, I just thought, gosh, I wonder what Jen thinks.
Right. Well, I think, and you made this distinction in several settings. We've talked about this before too, that those one-on-one conversations, I think, are where you have to be, you have to hit it head on. I think about an email I got from a principal years ago that, there was something that needed filled out. I don't know what it was. We were a staff of about 200, and it said, 14 of you have not filled out the survey that I asked you to fill out. And of course, that makes 186 people think, well, did I? I thought I did, but maybe I didn't. I don't know. And it makes 14 people angry because it's like, well, just tell me, right? So I think that's the difference. I think that the praise is for a group, and that, those leading behavioral statements that you make. It's so great to see so many of you out in the hallway, or wow, I loved seeing such a faculty turnout at the concert last night. What those are to everyone. But I do think they have to be framed in a way that doesn't make anyone who couldn't make it or who can't do those things, it can't make them feel like it's a passive aggressive dig. So to avoid that, I think it needs to be constant and frequent. You're just a person who compliments good work. You're
Yeah.
not doing it in any passive aggressive way. You're just going to point out when the staff does something really well. And then I think if there's a problem, you have to go and have that really difficult conversation with that person about that person's output, whatever that is. I always say, well, you've heard me say it 100 times, these conversations happen one sentence at a time. You don't, you need to start with, hey, I've got to have a difficult conversation with you. And then you can't be like, just kidding, we'll do it tomorrow. You're in it. And so you have to just say, here's what I'm seeing. And can we talk this through?
Okay, I'm going to tell a quick story as an application, because this is hard to do.
Right.
What you just described is so this requires a lot of wisdom. So I'm just going to tell a quick story, a memory. One day I was walking across my campus toward the end of the day. It was the last period. And I suddenly saw this influx of students coming from the wing that's the furthest out from the rest of the campus. And I was like, well, the bell hasn't rung. What are they doing now? So I stopped them and said, what are you guys doing in the hall? And they're like, oh, our teacher let us out early so we can make sure we get to the bus on time. And I was like, that's odd. And then I saw another group coming. And I was like, whoa, where are you guys coming from? Or our teacher let us out early so we can make sure we don't miss the bus on this. And then I ran into a third group. And so I was getting angrier and angrier as I saw these kids coming. And then eventually the bell rings, and because there were, I can't remember now, it's been too long, 3 or 4 different teachers from that part of the building. I didn't realize we're doing this. And what I wanted to do so badly, Jen, was to just step into an office, grab a phone, make an announcement. I want every student back into their classes right now at this moment, and just scold the whole school.
Right.
But I paused, and I remembered this tension. I literally had this conversation in my head, and I thought, no, what's going to be the most effective thing? Because all of those other teachers, those 95% that were doing exactly what they needed to do, finishing up the day, wrapping it up, they didn't need to hear me scolding them when 3 or 4 of them were letting kids out without permission early and making chaos in the halls. So I did the hard part. I went down and I found every one of those teachers one-on-one and just walked in their rooms after the school bell rang and said, hey, I just ran into your kids. This is the conversation I had. And this is not going to be, it's not consistent with what we do here by letting them out early, even though I know you're trying to be nice so they can make sure they get across the campus. And every one of them was like, okay, I'll stop doing that.
Yep.
And solution found.
Right.
But it required a lot more time on my part to make that happen.
It did, but look at what else you did too. In that scenario, you gave those teachers a reason to not do what was easier at the time. And also there was some peer and collegial pressure there, because if the teacher in 139 starts to release her kids 4 minutes early, then the teacher in 137 is going to say, well, then I better do that too. And then the kids in 135 are going to be like, they all get out early. And so then it becomes a culture. And there may have been that teacher at 135 may have been like, well, I really don't think I should, but these kids are saying they're not wrong. What you did is you gave the teachers the gift of the why. The why is, first of all, the principal saying, please don't. The second reason is this isn't what we do. The third is you're not even achieving your goals because the kids are not getting to the bus early. They're causing chaos in the hall. So if I'm a teacher, as I heard you telling the story, I'm thinking that I would actually want my principal to come and kindly, without judgment, say, hey, let's just cease and desist with this letting out early. It's not what we do there. I think I would react the same. I'd be like, oh, okay, thanks.
So I want to just, because it's Monday Matters and people listening to this may be listening to it at the time of its release or not, but Principal Matters listeners, I just want to have just as a kindness of the way for me to summarize these thoughts that Jen and I have said, I just wanted to leave you with 3 things to think about to kind of wrap up what Jen and I have both just said. 1, regularly look for and praise good behavior, because if you're consistently doing that, then people will expect that you are celebrating and elevating the good behaviors of the people that you see. You're not doing it as a trick or a manipulation. You just do that because it's the right thing to do. 2, when you observe behavior that's intolerable or hurting others or off target for the goals you've set for your school, intervene. You intervene because that's our responsibility as leaders. And then that crucial conversation can be applied in that moment. And then 3, set the norms or revisit them for the way that conversations and learning is supposed to be happening. And when you see people getting off target with that, then you revisit the norms, because those norms can be revisited without it sounding threatening or without it sounding pointed. And so Jen, I'll just wrap it up there. But anything else you want to add to that as we finish up this conversation?
No, I think it's very normal for these things to happen. It's very normal for people to find where the holes are in an organization, so to speak. And I think part of a principal's work is to find those holes and say, okay, this one is one that needs stopped up. And oh, there's another one. It does feel a little bit like a game of whack-a-mole, because a principal might be like, you know what? It was just a few years ago that I reminded people, let's not dismiss early. Now I got to do it again. And the answer is, yep, you sure do. It's a good reminder. It's fine.
I'm going to include a visual with this because I actually had this thought when I was thinking through these ideas, Jen. I was like, what would Jen do with this tension? She'd draw a Venn diagram.
Yeah.
And so I was like, so if I had crucial conversations in one circle, superstar conversations in the other circle, where do they diverge and where do they overlap? And so if you want to see a sample of that little wordplay in a Venn diagram, Principal Matters listeners, then check out the website post that accompanies this podcast.
And you know what? I know we're trying to wrap up, but another thing that I would say, I'm glad you mentioned Venn diagram, because there's times you do both. There's times you might say to your staff at a staff meeting, hey, as a reminder, let's all keep our eye on the restrooms during class change because we're seeing more vandalism in there. And I'm going to come and actually talk to a couple of you who I think I really need you to be more present because your classroom's right there. And then you also go to that teacher and say, hey, remember, this is your duty. So if you could make sure you keep your eye on the restroom, like I said in the staff meeting for everybody, but this is especially important for you. So I think there's times you do both.
Well, Jen, this Monday Matters is coming out January 13th. So I just want to give a quick shout out to anyone who is going to be perhaps attending the SAM 18th Annual National Conference in Miami, Florida, because I get to be there with my friend Mark Schellinger. And you've got some training coming up in February. You want to give folks a reminder where they can find you if they're in that part of the country?
I do. I will be speaking to the Utah Elementary Principals Association at the end of February.
Yeah. So if you're in Utah, you better sign up now because
yes,
not much time left. Well, Jen, I hope you have a fantastic week. Thank you for being a part of Monday Matters, and Principal Matters listeners. Thank you. You can find all of our resources at williamdparker.com. And Jen, how can they find you?
They can find me at jenschwanke.com. That's Jen, SCHWANKE.com.
All right. Thank you. And thanks for doing what matters. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, would you take a moment and like, share, subscribe, or leave us a review? In fact, if you share it out with a friend, even more people can become a part of these conversations. Sign up for our newsletter at williamdparker.com for even more free resources. And don't forget to check out our website to learn more about our books, professional development offerings, Grow Academies, masterminds, executive coaching, and keynote presentations. Wow, let's keep learning together. And thank you for doing what matters.
Monday Matters.